Christina writes, I grew up in an Irish village where everyone believed in God. There was an underlying tension between the Catholics and the Protestants, but whatever they thought about each other, no one doubted God's existence. Everyone went to church on Sunday. As soon as I was old enough to be away from home and to be in control of my own life, I stopped attending church. Life was difficult for me. Trying to navigate life challenges occupied all my time. So there certainly was no time to go to church. Anyway, I believed that God only came into our lives after we died. If we had lived a good life, we would go to heaven. If we had been bad, we would go to hell. How wrong I was. But it was going to be decades later before I knew how close God was to me. And he wasn't going to leave me high and dry out in the wide world. Much later, I was to learn the extent of his following after me. Funnily enough, even though I didn't think God would hear me, I always felt the need to pray. And when I did, I felt an enormous burden lifted from my shoulders. 40 years later, I was beginning to look back over my life and to think again about God's presence. I realized that I had been given most of what I had prayed for. Some things had taken years, but nevertheless, they were here now. My children had grown into the kind of people I had prayed for, and other things I had wanted and didn't receive, I now recognized would have been quite harmful. At the end of 2005, I accidentally met an old acquaintance in the supermarket. She gave me an invitation to a non-denominational weekly Bible study. I still have the invitation. It says in large letters, "Come and see." The meetings would begin in the new year, 2006. Since I was busy on Saturdays and Sundays, I decided to show my gratitude to God by giving him my Tuesday mornings. Once the studies began, it didn't take long for me to see and recognize this amazing God who had walked beside me all my life without me knowing. I shuddered when I remembered dangerous situations I had allowed myself to be in, and it could only have been him who protected me. I saw then that I needed to be going to church. 4 ladies from the group wanted me to go with them to their churches. But I wanted to go to a church where I knew nobody, and I could make a fresh start. Just God and me. In the meantime, during a difficult time in my personal life, Bill came into my life. The timing of his arrival was perfect. He took charge of my situation and my problems disappeared. Bill was a Seventh-day Adventist and knew that I was going back to church after a 40-year absence. He gently tried to tell me about the Sabbath, and I resisted. I told him that I didn't feel that God was impressing me to keep Saturday. And didn't God approve of my life? Why had he given me everything I wanted? And didn't he allow me to do my best work on Saturday? So, My first available Sunday in November 2006, I went to church. The church had been recommended to me by another lady from the Bible study group. She told me about Alf, the minister. Alf had been a truck driver who had answered God's call to serve him. Alf was amazing. He really was on fire for God. I had never heard preaching like this. If I had, I would have come to know God when I was a child, and my life would have been very different. However, I think Alf was upset with his congregation. When it was time for Holy Communion, he passed around a large loaf of bread. He said, "I want you all to tear off a big lump, and I hope it nearly chokes you as you're swallowing it." After the service, I talked to him. I was shocked to hear that this was his last day at the church. I thought he had been transferred to another church, and I asked where he was going. I would have followed him anywhere. He said he wasn't going anywhere. He was taking a break. Now, just when I was so excited about finding my spiritual home, I was left shattered, seeing it ripped away from me. I didn't know what to do next. The following Wednesday, while watching Three Angels Broadcasting Network, Bill's wife Anne was strongly impressed to record Brian McMahon showing from the Bible how the Sabbath was never changed. The same day that she gave me the video, I felt obligated to watch it at home. I sat on the floor just in front of the TV. I couldn't wait to get it over so I could return the video to her. Less than an hour later, I was still sitting on the floor. Only now, I wasn't irritated. I was mesmerized. I knew my life was never going to be the same again. It wasn't just the truth about the Sabbath that thrilled me so much. It was the lengths that God was prepared to go to get me back to not only church, but the right church. The next Sabbath I walked into a Seventh-day Adventist church. They sang one of my favourite songs that I didn't even know was a hymn, softly and tenderly. I had only heard it in a film. But God knew how much I loved it, and I felt he was saying to me, after this long, hard journey that he had accompanied me on, "Welcome home." Psalm 33, verses 13 to 15 from the Message. From high in the skies God looks around. He sees all Adam's brood. From where he sits, he overlooks all us earth dwellers. He has shaped each person in turn. Now he watches everything we do.